$47. That's the median net worth of everything a person entering a maximum security facility is allowed to keep. $47 in a commissary account, a jumpsuit that fits like a hefty bag, and whatever's already inside their head. No go bag, no trauma kit, no $800 water filter that removes 99.9% of pathogens and comes with its own carabiner. Nothing. And yet people survive in there for years, decades. In environments with active predation, no medical care worth mentioning, institutional food designed to deliver calories without nutrition, and zero privacy, zero silence, ever. They survive. A lot of them don't just survive. They get sharp. Here's the thing that should bother every prepper who's spent real money on real gear. The techniques that keep people alive inside those walls don't require any of your equipment. They don't require electricity. They don't require a supply chain. They don't require a credit card. They require a mind that's been forced to operate without a safety net long enough to stop looking for one. I spent months inside the research on this. Oral histories, correctional psychology literature, accounts from formerly incarcerated individuals across 14 different facilities. What I found doesn't just challenge the go-bag mentality, it embarrasses it. 7 techniques, ranked by how badly your current prep is ignoring them. The number 1 entry is the one that will genuinely make you angry, not at prisoners, but at yourself for missing something this obvious. Let's go. First tier. The overlooked mechanics, numbers 7 through 5. These are the techniques that sound simple until you try to do them without any infrastructure. Number 7, the discipline cache. Most people think hiding things is for paranoid people with too much time. That assumption will cost you everything you've stockpiled inside 72 hours of a real disruption. Here's how caching works inside. You have 1 item of value, a bar of soap, a postage stamp, 3 packets of instant ramen. The temptation is to use it immediately, because using it feels like proof you have it. Experienced incarcerated individuals, the ones who've been inside long enough to understand the actual resource economy, do the opposite. Not from themselves, from the social pressure to share, barter too cheaply, or have it taken. The hiding is not hoarding. The hiding is insulation against negotiating from desperation. Think about what that means in a collapse scenario. Your neighbor sees your generator. Your extended family finds out you have 3 months of food. The social pressure to immediately liquidate your stockpile becomes enormous. And if you haven't pre-positioned caches, distributed, hidden, compartmentalized caches, you will negotiate from desperation every single time. Within a week, everything you spent years accumulating is gone, and you're back to zero. The mechanics prisoners use are worth understanding precisely. Small caches distributed across multiple locations. Never one central store. Items wrapped to suppress smell when smell can betray location. Caches positioned to be accessible under duress but not discoverable by casual search. None of this requires gear. It requires habit. The catch here is psychological more than practical. People resist distributed caching because it feels like giving up control. You want your stuff where you can see it. It is also, in any high-pressure social environment, a direct invitation to lose everything in a single interaction. Monday morning action. You've got supplies somewhere in your house. Take 20% of them. Put them somewhere else. Somewhere no one who comes through your front door will find. This is not paranoia. This is the first thing every long-term prisoner learns without being taught. Number 6. Improvise tools for material reality. Nobody is going to give you what you need. Stop waiting. Stop planning around what you'll have. Start planning around what you have. Start planning around what you can make from whatever's left after someone takes everything else. This is where prepper culture goes catastrophically wrong. The gear acquisition mentality assumes the scenario. I have all my gear, now I use it. Correctional environments force a different assumption by default. I have nothing. What can I build? These two mental starting points produce radically different people when the first assumption falls apart, and it always falls apart. Open your junk drawer right now. Not your go bag, not your prep room, your actual junk drawer, the one with dead batteries and a tape measure with a broken clip. Tell me what you could make from that if your life required it. Experienced incarcerated individuals develop what psychologists who study this call material fluency, the ability to look at any object and immediately inventory its functional properties independent of its intended purpose. A plastic bag is not a bag. It's a waterproof container, a signal device, a makeshift glove, a fire-starting aid. A sock is not a sock. It's insulation, a filter medium, a tourniquet, a carrying pouch. This mental reflex, re-seeing every object as a kit of raw properties, is a learned skill. It takes deliberate practice, and most preppers have never done it once. The mechanism matters here. Conventional tools lower cognitive load because they do the interpretation for you. A knife is obviously a knife, but the moment your conventional tools disappear, You need to have already built the neural pathways that let you solve physical problems without the pre-solved versions. People who've spent years in environments where improvisation wasn't optional have those pathways burned deep, in a real material sense, more capable than someone with a $300 multi-tool who has never needed to think that hard. The catch: improvised tools are slower, less reliable, and sometimes dangerous to make. A sharpened toothbrush takes hours. A friction fire takes stamina. This is not a criticism, it's an important calibration. You will not improvise as fast under stress as you think, but you will improvise something, which beats improvising nothing, which is what happens to people who only trained with equipment they no longer have. Number 5, metabolic accounting. Here's a sentence that most preppers have never said out loud. I don't actually know how many calories I need to function, not to thrive, not to work hard, just to function. Think about what a day of reduced physical activity and minimal stress actually costs in calories. Most people vastly overestimate. They plan emergency food stores around normal consumption psychology, the psychology of eating 3 meals a day, because it's the 3 meals a day, part of the day, nutritional floor, and develop a precise embodied understanding of what their body actually requires to keep the lights on. The average caloric content of correctional facility meals runs between 2,200 and 2,500 calories daily across most US systems. That sounds like enough. It isn't. Not with the metabolic cost of chronic stress, poor sleep architecture, and the thermoregulation demands of institutional environments. What experienced incarcerated individuals develop in response is an extraordinary sensitivity to energy. Where it goes, how to preserve it, how to supplement from commissary or informal economy in targeted ways. Walk me through the survival math. You've got 2,000 calories stored. You think that's 2 days. Maybe it's 4 if you know how to drop your metabolic expenditure deliberately, reduce movement, reduce heat loss, reduce the emotional arousal that burns glucose like a furnace running too hot. Long-term incarcerated individuals get genuinely good at what amounts to voluntary metabolic downregulation. Slower, quieter, cooler, not lazy, efficient. There's a difference. The uncomfortable math on your own prep. If you've stored food for 30 days based on your current consumption patterns and you've never once practiced deliberate caloric restriction in a low-movement scenario, you don't have 30 days. You have maybe 20. And you'll spend the last 10 of those days wondering why you feel like you're dying on 1,800 calories, which is objectively fine. This is the only Tier 1 technique, with a direct, immediate training protocol. Starting this weekend, run 1 day on 1,500 calories. 1 day. Not as punishment, as calibration. Understand what your body actually says to you. Understand how long it says it before it stops saying it. Second tier. We're stepping up. Techniques 4 and 3. These are the ones that don't fit on any gear list because they aren't gear. They're operating systems. They're the part of the prep equation that money cannot buy after the fact. Number 4, sleep architecture under hostility. Most people's understanding of sleep hygiene is built entirely around having a bed, darkness, quiet, and 8 hours. Remove any one of those variables and the average person's sleep quality collapses, catastrophically. Remove all 4 simultaneously. Resiftes variables, which is standard in any correctional facility with open dormitory housing, constant fluorescent lighting, random noise at 2 a.m., and a mattress that was designed by someone who fundamentally hates backs. And you're operating in conditions that most people would describe as impossible. People survived this for years. The technique isn't acceptance, it's architecture. Incarcerated individuals who navigate multi-year sentences without psychiatric deterioration from sleep deprivation. And there are more of them than correctional psychology is comfortable admitting. Develop a sleep approach that looks completely alien to anyone raised on conventional rest advice. First, anchor naps. Short, deliberate sleep windows positioned around predictable low-disruption intervals rather than chasing the mythical full-night cycle. Second, sensory neutralization. Ear-blocking techniques using available materials. Visual obstruction with whatever cloth is available. The goal is not perfect sensory reduction, that's impossible. The goal is enough reduction to drop into stage 2 sleep and accumulate it in fragments. Third, emotional compartmentalization before sleep onset. This one is harder to explain but easy to understand. You cannot fall asleep when your nervous system is running a threat assessment. Experienced long-term prisoners are dramatically better at consciously suspending active threat monitoring than the average person, not because they're less afraid. Because they've learned that fear is not protective when you're unconscious, and feeding fear before sleep guarantees you won't get enough of it to stay functional. Here's where the prepper relevance becomes sharp. Your bug-out scenario probably assumes sleeping in a tent, or a vehicle, or a community shelter, or a structure that isn't your own home with blackout curtains and white noise. Every one of those scenarios degrades your sleep. Every single one. And degraded sleep means degraded judgment, fast. Studies on sleep restriction show decision-making quality drops measurably after 1 bad night and significantly after 3. You're making life or death resource decisions on day 4 of your survival scenario, with the cognitive load of someone legally too impaired to drive. That's the scenario you haven't trained for. The catch: this technique requires genuine practice to develop, and it's deeply uncomfortable to practice voluntarily. Sleep training in a deliberately disruptive environment, with light, with noise, on a hard surface, feels like self-punishment. It is self-punishment. It's also the only way to build the neurological adaptation before you need it. Number 3, reading the room before the room knows you're reading. Let's pause here, because this is where the conversation shifts from technique to something more fundamental: the difference between reactive survival and predictive survival. Most people in a collapse scenario will be reactive. Something happens, they respond. Something escalates, they respond again. They're always one step behind the situation, burning energy and making decisions under duress, which is the worst possible condition for decision-making. They will feel busy. They won't be effective. Incarcerated individuals in general population housing, particularly in facilities with active gang dynamics, territorial economics, and unpredictable violence, develop what I can only describe as environmental social radar. The ability to read behavioral signals, micro shifts in social temperature, alliance patterns, and threat indicators before they become kinetic events. Before someone gets hurt, before the confrontation that everyone else will describe afterward as coming out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. It had precursors. People trained in this environment saw them. The mechanism is worth understanding. Human threat behavior, the behavior that precedes violence, theft, coercion, follows predictable patterns that we are biologically wired to detect but socially trained to ignore. The preparatory behavioral cluster before aggression. Changed body posture, reduced verbal engagement, increased environmental scanning, group clustering. You have seen all of these patterns in your daily life and trained yourself not to consciously register them because they feel rude to notice and usually nothing happens. In a controlled, safe environment, that's fine. It's a reasonable social adaptation. In an unstable environment, deliberately ignoring that data stream is lethal. Prisoners who survive high-threat housing for years become experts at running this data stream consciously. They enter every room with a quiet, ongoing behavioral inventory. Who's where? Who's talking to whom? What changed since yesterday? What the body language of the person near the door is doing that it wasn't doing 20 minutes ago. They do this continuously, without appearing to. The invisibility of the monitoring is part of the technique. Alerting potential threats to the fact that you're watching them changes their behavior and makes your data noisier. Now picture your neighborhood 6 months into a serious disruption. You know some of your neighbors. You don't know all of them. New people have moved through. Alliances have formed that you're not party to. Resources are scarce enough that people are making decisions they wouldn't make in normal times. Tell me honestly, are you running an active behavioral inventory of that environment? Or are you waiting for something to happen before you start paying attention? Here's a concrete start. This week, not in a collapse. Now, practice noticing behavioral microshifts in every group environment you enter. Restaurants, waiting rooms, your block, not paranoia, noticing. Deliberately bringing what you already unconsciously detect into conscious cataloged awareness. It feels strange for about 3 days. Then it becomes automatic. An automatic threat detection, pre-escalation, is the survival tool that no gear catalog has ever sold. Final tier, the holy grails. These are the 2 that showed up in every account, every facility, every documented survival narrative from inside. If you only build 2 of these 7 into your actual practice, not your theoretical prep, your actual practice behavior, make it these. Number 2, the information economy. Forget the barter economy for a minute. Forget the commissary. The most valuable currency in any correctional facility isn't food or tobacco or hygiene products. It's knowing things other people don't know yet. Information about what's coming. Information about who's connected to whom. Information about what the administration is about to change. What transfer is happening next week, what conflict is building in the block nobody's talking about openly. The people who traffic in this information, who invest deliberately in collecting it, verifying it, and distributing it strategically, occupy a protected social position that no physical asset can purchase. Because physical assets can be taken, information can't. The intelligence network in a functioning prison yard is, frankly, more sophisticated than most people's understanding of intelligence work. Multi-layered sourcing, active cultivation of informants across different social groups, which requires relationships across tribal lines, which is itself a skill that most preppers are terrible at. Information verification through cross-referencing, because bad information spread with confidence destroys credibility faster than silence does. Deliberate compartmentalization of sensitive intelligence from general circulation. These aren't bureaucratic structures. They're survival structures that evolved organically because the alternative was operating blind in a high-threat environment. which is a quick way to end up in the infirmary. Now look at your neighborhood again. In a real disruption, information becomes the scarcest and most valuable commodity faster than food. Who in your network of 12 blocks knows the actual status of the water treatment facility? Who knows which roads are actually passable? Who has a direct line to someone inside the distribution network for whatever is still being distributed? Not rumors. Verified sourced intelligence with known reliability ratings. Here's the brutal, honest number. Most preppers have spent thousands of dollars on gear in 0 hours building deliberate information networks. 0. They assume that in a real scenario, the information they need will surface somehow, through some means, and they'll have it when they need it. That assumption is how you make major decisions: shelter in place or bug out, share resources or protect them, trust or don't trust, with essentially no data. Prisoners who die inside are very often prisoners who operated on bad information or no information. Prisoners who survive for decades are very often the ones who understood that knowing more than the person across from you is a form of armor. The actionable version starts now, not in the collapse. This month, introduce yourself to someone on your block you don't know, not for friendship, for network. One person who works in a different sector, knows different people, moves through a different daily circuit than you do. That's one node. You want 12. Number 1. The art of being nobody. Nobody. This is the one. This is the technique that my research kept circling back to across every account, every facility, every survival outcome study I could find. And it's the one that the prepper community has spent almost zero time developing, because it is the exact opposite of the public-facing identity that prepper culture tends to reward. The highest survival individuals inside. The ones who navigate multi-year sentences across high-threat environments without becoming victims of predatory violence or institutional reprisal. Who accumulate resources, social capital, and actual safety, share one behavioral signature that overrides everything else. They are functionally invisible, not physically absent. Not antisocial, not silent. Functionally invisible means they are impossible to categorize as a high-value target. Their resources are not visible. Their emotional responses are not easily provoked. Their alliances are real but not performative. No displays of loyalty that signal to enemies who your friends are and therefore where you're vulnerable. Their capabilities are not advertised. Their plans are not discussed. They move through the social environment as a low-information entity, deliberately, strategically projecting insufficient signal for threat actors to accurately assess them as worth targeting. Let me break down the actual mechanism, because this sounds vague, and it isn't. Human predation, whether it's a violent threat inside a facility or a social coercion dynamic in a resource-scarce community, is fundamentally driven by cost-benefit calculation. You are targeted when a threat actor assesses that what they can get from you exceeds what it will cost them to take it. That assessment requires information. Information about what you have. Information about your physical capability to resist. Information about your social connections, and whether attacking you will trigger a costly social response. Information about your emotional predictability, whether you'll panic, negotiate from fear, or respond with disproportionate force. The highest survival individuals in correctional environments systematically deny this information. They don't advertise resources. They don't telegraph emotional responses. They don't position themselves as either very strong, which invites challenges from rivals, or very weak, which invites predation from opportunists. They present themselves as difficult to calculate, and a threat actor who cannot accurately calculate the cost of targeting you will most of the time pick someone whose cost structure is more legible. Now apply this to your suburban prep setup. You've got a truck with a winch and an NRA sticker and a generator humming in your garage that your neighbors can hear from 2 houses down. You've told 4 people about your food storage because you were trying to convince them to prep. Your social media has 3 years of gear photos and range day updates and bug out route speculation. And in a real scenario, what you've actually done is publish a resource inventory and broadcast your exact threat profile to everyone within social earshot. Here's a sentence that should genuinely concern you. The people most likely to be targeted in a resource-scarce collapse scenario are the ones who visibly prepared for one, because they are the legible high-value targets. Because everyone around them spent the last 3 years watching them accumulate exactly the things everyone suddenly desperately needs. Visible preparation is a marketing campaign for your own victimization. The technique is not about abandoning your prep. It is about decoupling your preparedness from your identity performance. The highest survival incarcerated individuals are genuinely capable people who have deliberately constructed an outward presentation that conceals that capability. They know how to use tools they never display. They have resources. Nobody has inventoried. They have alliances. Nobody has mapped. They have physical and cognitive capabilities they've never demonstrated for an audience. Walk me through what this looks like in practice right now, before anything happens. It looks like stopping the public prep identity. No more social media gear displays. No more neighborhood-wide generator audibility. No more pre-collapse conversations. That amount to here is exactly what I have, and where I keep it. It looks like moving your most valuable supplies to locations that are not associated with your public identity, not your home address, or at least not the obvious storage points of your home. It looks like building capabilities that exist entirely in your body and your mind and cannot be inventoried from outside, because the body and the mind are the only caches that follow you into every scenario, that cannot be raided while you're sleeping, and that get more valuable the longer you work on them. That is what prisoners know. $47 in a jumpsuit and years of getting genuinely operationally harder to target. That is the preparationally harder to target. 7 techniques. None of them required a gear catalog. The cache that distributes rather than concentrates. The improvised tool built from material fluency, not wishful thinking. The metabolic accounting that turns 30 days of food into 45. The sleep architecture that functions under hostility rather than collapsing at the first uncomfortable night. The threat reading that sees what's coming before the room knows you're watching. The information economy that trades in the only currency that can't be taken from you. And the operational invisibility that removes you from the target calculation entirely. You've been preparing your equipment. Start preparing your mind to survive without it. The people who've been forced to do exactly that are waiting to be understood. Don't wait for the situation to teach you what they already know.